The air in Amadou's Parisian office was always too clean, too chilled. Outside, the Eiffel Tower glittered, a postcard against the twilight. But Amadou Diallo wasn't looking at the view. He was glaring at his laptop screen, a bitter taste in his mouth. Another news alert about Burkina Faso. Another report detailing President Ibrahim Traoré's latest project, a solar farm inaugurated in Fadangourma, promising stable electricity for thousands. Stable electricity. In his country. The country he'd dismissed as a lost cause just 2 years ago. He remembered the call vividly, late 2022. The shaky voice of a young captain, barely audible over a crackling line. Ibrahim Traoré. Amadou had barely registered the name then. Another soldier, another coup, another doomed cycle in the relentless downward spiral of Burkina Faso. Terrorist attacks were daily horrors. Infrastructure crumbled. Corruption was the air everyone breathed. Amadou, who'd built his successful logistics empire from a tiny Dakar office to commanding ports across West Africa, had long ago written Burkina off. His investments were in Senegal, Côte d'Ivoire, Ghana, places with potential, places where deals didn't dissolve into threats and demands for bribes before the ink dried. The caller, this Traoré, had spoken passionately, his voice rough with exhaustion but burning with conviction. He spoke of sovereignty, of dignity, of reclaiming the nation from the jaws of terror and foreign interference. He spoke of investment. Not handouts, he'd stressed, but partnership. Burkinabè abroad with their capital and expertise, coming home to rebuild. Amadou had listened, polite but distant. He'd heard variations of this song before. Captain, Amadou had finally cut in, his tone smooth, practiced, the tone he used to politely decline bad proposals. With all respect, sir, my business operates on stability, predictability. What you describe, it's a noble dream. But the reality on the ground, the headlines speak for themselves. Bombs, kidnappings, a government struggling to pay salaries. Where is the stability for investment? Where is the guarantee? He hadn't waited for a rebuttal. He'd wished the young leader luck, sincerely hoping he wouldn't end up dead or deposed within the month, and hung up. He'd recounted the conversation later that evening over expensive Bordeaux in a chic Saint-Germain restaurant to his friend, Moussa. Moussa, a retired engineer living comfortably in Montreal, had snorted. Investment? In that mess? Amadou, my friend, you were too kind. The man is delusional, or desperate. Probably both. Did he offer you a gold mine, or maybe a guaranteed cut of the next aid package? Moussa chuckled, swirling his wine. My cousins in Ouaga barely dare to leave their neighborhood after dark. Schools are closing. Roads are impassable. And he wants us to pour money in. Let him fix the security first. Let him prove he's not just another uniformed thief. Then maybe we talk. Their skepticism was echoed in the buzzing WhatsApp groups of the Burkinabè diaspora. Patriotism militant was particularly active. Aïcha Sawadogo, a sharp-tongued political science lecturer based in London, was a frequent contributor. She dissected Traoré's speeches with academic precision, picking apart his nationalist rhetoric, his critique of France, his embrace of Russia. It's populism 101, she typed furiously one night. Replace the old neo-colonial masters with new ones draped in different flags. Create an enemy, promise the moon, blame everyone else when you inevitably fail. Investment? It's a trap. Our money would vanish into the pockets of his junta cronies or fund more questionable military deals. Mark my words. Her posts garnered dozens of likes and supportive comments. Exactly, Dr. Aïcha. We've seen this movie before. Let him walk the walk before asking for our cash. The consensus among the enlightened diaspora abroad was clear. Ibrahim Traoré was an idealist at best, a dangerous demagogue at worst. Investing under his chaotic, untested rule was financial suicide. Pure folly. They watched from afar, arms metaphorically folded, waiting for the inevitable collapse. The first tremors of doubt began subtly. Months after the initial call, the relentless drumbeat of negative news from Burkina Faso started to shift. Not disappear, The terrorist threat remained grimly real. But alongside reports of attacks came other stories, smaller at first, easier to dismiss. Easier to. A news clip showed Captain Traoré, now President Traoré, sweating alongside volunteers, clearing debris from a market bombed in the north. Not just a photo op, genuine sustained effort. Then came reports of local militias, the VDP, Volunteers for the Defense of the Fatherland, actually receiving proper training and equipment. Not just thrown into the fray with machetes. There were murmurs, cautiously optimistic, from relatives back home. The soldiers seemed different this time, less arrogant, more present. Amadou noticed it in his business circles. A contact in Accra mentioned a Burkinabè delegation visiting, seeking partnerships for agricultural processing. Surprisingly competent, the contact admitted. No nonsense, straight talk, focused on how, not just what they could get. Amadou filed it away, a curious anomaly. Moussa heard it in the weary voices of his cousins during their weekly calls. The fear was still there, a constant hum, but something else was creeping in. Papa Moussa, his young nephew had said hesitantly, "The soldiers came to our school yesterday, not to demand anything. They brought books, and they fixed the broken gate. They said the president ordered it." Moussa had brushed it off. Propaganda, buying loyalty. Aïcha saw it in the data. Security analysts she respected, initially deeply skeptical, began publishing nuanced reports. Territorial losses weren't just being stemmed. Some areas were being actively reclaimed. The tactics seemed different, less reliance on foreign troops, more emphasis on local intelligence and rapid mobile strikes. Traoré's fiery rhetoric against France was matched by concrete actions, demanding revisions to defense agreements, diversifying military partnerships. It wasn't smooth, it wasn't universally successful, but it wasn't the implosion they'd predicted. She found herself spending late nights reading beyond the headlines, a knot of unease forming in her stomach. Then came the projects. Not grand announcements, but tangible results filtering through the dense fog of skepticism. Pictures surfaced on social media, not from government accounts, but from ordinary citizens. A newly paved road snaking through a region previously cut off. Not a gleaming highway, but solid functional tarmac, where only dust and potholes existed before. Comments flooded in. Finally. Took only 30 years. Can actually get my goods to market now. Videos showed the inauguration of a small hydroelectric dam in the Cascades region. Traoré, looking thinner, older, but radiating a fierce energy, spoke not just of megawatts, but of irrigation for farmers, of power for clinics and schools. Built by Burkinabè engineers with Burkinabè labor for the Burkinabè people. The crowd's roar was genuine, deafening. Aïcha watched it, replaying it several times. The sheer hope on those faces was hard to dismiss as mere orchestration. Amadou got a call from a long-dormant contact in Ouagadougou, a former business associate he'd written off. "Amadou, you won't believe it. They cleared the red tape from my warehouse expansion in 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Before, it would take 3 years and cost triple in bribes. They say the president personally ordered a crackdown on the commission agents in the ministries. People are actually scared to ask for bribes now." Amadou listened, stunned. This wasn't propaganda. This was a businessman, notoriously cynical, sounding almost giddy. Moussa's cousin sent photos, not of soldiers or ruins, but of a newly built health clinic in their neighborhood. Funded locally, the caption read. Community collected some, government matched it. Traoré came to open it. He didn't just cut a ribbon. He sat with the nurses for an hour, asking questions. Moussa stared at the photo of the simple, clean building. It looked real, functional, needed. He thought of his sister who died years ago from a treatable illness because the nearest clinic was too far and too poorly equipped. A cold dread, different from fear, began to seep into his bones. The damning realization came drip by drip, like water wearing a waystone. The diaspora WhatsApp groups grew quieter on the topic of Traoré's imminent failure. The constant critiques from Aïcha became less frequent, replaced by analytical silences. The jokes about Traoré's fantasy projects stopped. Instead, a different kind of post emerged. Hesitant. Curious. Did anyone see the report on the new textile factory in Koudougou? Apparently creating 500 jobs? My brother says the price of cement has stabilized, says the new regulations on imports are actually working. Is it true they reopened the rail link to Abidjan, efficiently? Then came the stories that hit closer to home. An acquaintance from university, who'd stubbornly stayed in Ouagadougou running a small IT firm, posted pictures of a sleek new office. Expanding. Secured a low-interest loan through the new National Entrepreneurship Fund. Process was transparent. Still pinching myself. The comment section wasn't filled with skepticism, but with genuine congratulations and questions. How? What were the terms? Is it real? Amadou felt a gnawing hollowness. He'd built his empire on spotting opportunity early, on calculated risks. He replayed Traoré's rough, passionate call in his mind. He remembered his own dismissive, polished refusal. The security situation had improved, incrementally but significantly. Corruption was being tackled, not eradicated, but visibly pushed back. Infrastructure was being built. And the energy, the palpable sense of national purpose emanating from the country, was undeniable. It was no longer desperation. It was determination. He saw the deals being signed, not just with Russia, but with Turkish construction firms, Chinese renewable energy companies, even cautious European investors dipping toes back in. Deals he could have been part of. Markets he knew intimately, now potentially booming under a stability he hadn't believed possible. Moussa felt it as a profound ache, a deep sense of displacement. His grandkids in Montreal spoke French and English fluently, but stumbled over more. They knew poutine better than toe. The photos from home now showed not just resilience, but renewal. Community gardens flourishing, youth centers being built, a defiant pride in Faso Yirwa, the land of incorruptible people, that resonated deeply in his soul. He'd left seeking peace and comfort, but he was missing something vital. Belonging to a nation rising. The guilt was suffocating. He'd called it a lost cause. He'd mocked the man trying to save it. Aïcha grappled with intellectual whiplash. Her careful, critical framework was crumbling. The data didn't lie. Economic indicators, while starting from a devastatingly low base, were trending upwards. Foreign reserves were increasing. Agricultural production showed signs of recovery. Security metrics, though still fragile, showed measurable gains. Traoré wasn't just surviving, he was governing, with a focus on tangible development and national sovereignty that resonated powerfully with the population. Her academic peers, those who specialized in the Sahel, were increasingly acknowledging the Burkinabè exception under Traoré. She felt exposed. Her earlier pronouncements, so confidently delivered in the WhatsApp groups, now felt embarrassingly short-sighted. She hadn't just been wrong, she'd actively discouraged others based on her misjudgment. The turning point was the national broadcast. Traoré, addressing the nation on the anniversary of his transition. He didn't sugarcoat the challenges. The enemy was still strong, the economic road was long. But he spoke of victories, small and large. Liberated villages, harvests secured, schools reopened, factories humming. He spoke of the sacrifices of the people, the bravery of the soldiers and VDPs. He spoke of sovereignty not as a slogan, but as a lived reality, controlling their resources, choosing their partners, defining their own future. Then, his voice hardened slightly. He addressed the diaspora. We know many of you watched from afar. You saw the darkness, the despair. You doubted. You feared. Some even scorned our efforts. That is understandable. The wounds were deep. He paused, his gaze intense, seeming to pierce through the screen. But while you doubted, your brothers and sisters here did not break. They fought. They built. They sacrificed. They believed. Burkina Faso is rising, not on the whims of foreigners, but on the sweat, blood, and unwavering spirit of its own people. The doors remain open. Burkina Faso needs all her children. But understand this. We are building our future. We welcome partnership, but not pity. We seek investment, but not exploitation. We need those who believe not just in profit, but in Faso. The speech ended. In Paris, Amadou sat in his silent, sterile office, the Eiffel Tower's lights mocking his isolation. In Montreal, Moussa wept quietly, the images of the clinic, the paved roads, the defiant faces of his people flashing before him. In London, Aïcha closed her laptop, the weight of Traoré's words, the undeniable evidence of progress she'd dismissed, pressing down on her. They had all been so spectacularly, arrogantly wrong. Panic, cold and slick, replaced skepticism. They were missing it. The train was leaving the station, and they were still standing on the platform, clutching their doubts like worthless tickets. Amadou acted first. He called his most connected associate in Ouaga, a man who moved in government circles. "Bakari, old friend. How are things? Listen, I've been following the incredible progress. Truly remarkable what the president is achieving. I was thinking, perhaps it's time I looked seriously at opportunities back home. Could use some guidance. Maybe an introduction, a chance to discuss logistics corridors. I could be on the next flight." Bakari's voice was polite but distant. "Ah, Amadou, good to hear from you. Yes, things are busy. Very busy. Many delegations, you understand. The president's schedule, it's extremely tight, focused on those already committed on the ground. But I'll mention your interest. No promises." The brush-off was clear. Amadou redoubled his efforts. He drafted elaborate proposals for port modernization and agricultural export hubs. He emailed ministries, using all his corporate gravitas. Responses were slow, formal, non-committal. The doors weren't slammed shut, but they weren't swinging open either. He wasn't a partner. He was an afterthought. A name on a list of those who hadn't believed. Moussa swallowed his pride. He called his nephew, the one whose school gate had been fixed. "My boy, listen. Your papa Moussa has been thinking. I have some savings. Maybe I could help with that community center project you mentioned. Or the clinic. Perhaps I could even come back. Help out? Do you think anyone important would have time to talk to an old engineer who wants to contribute?" His nephew was kind, but firm. "Papa, it's wonderful you want to help, truly. But the projects, they have committees now, local planning. Everyone wants to be involved. It's not like before. And the president, he meets with communities, with workers, with the families of the martyrs. His time, it's for the people here, fighting every day. Maybe write a letter to the Ministry for Returnees? They handle those things now." The message was gentle but devastating. You weren't here when it mattered. Get in line. Aïcha's approach was intellectual. She penned a meticulously researched article praising the Burkinabè model of community-led development and pragmatic sovereignty. She highlighted Traoré's achievements, framing them within progressive post-colonial theory. She submitted it to prestigious journals and emailed it directly to the presidency's communication office, offering her expertise for future policy development. Silence. Her article languished. Her emails went unanswered. Her attempts to contact former colleagues in Ouagadougou's universities were met with vague replies about heavy workloads. Her intellectual conversion, it seemed, was noted, but not valued. They didn't need her validation now. They were too busy building. The desperation curdled into humiliation. They saw others gaining traction. Diaspora who had maintained ties, who had sent money home even during the darkest times, who had vocally supported the transition despite the risks, were being acknowledged. They were consulted on policy panels. They were invited to investment forums. Their projects received smoother approvals. They were part of the narrative of resurgence. Amadou, Moussa, and Aïcha, once respected voices in their communities abroad, were now on the outside looking in. The WhatsApp groups they once dominated were now filled with excited plans for visits home, discussions about new business ventures in Ouaga, proud shares of relatives' successes. Their own contributions felt hollow, their sudden enthusiasm transparently opportunistic. Finally, driven by a mix of shame, greed, and a genuine belated surge of patriotism, they resorted to the unthinkable. They decided to beg, not through intermediaries, not with proposals, but directly. Amadou used every ounce of his dwindling influence. He pulled in favors from African Union contacts, from Senegalese ministers who knew Traoré. He wasn't asking for a contract, he pleaded, just 5 minutes. A chance to apologize, to explain, to offer his network, his experience. Tell him Amadou Diallo understands now. Tell him I see Faso rising. Tell him I want to be part of it. Moussa wrote a handwritten letter, not typed. Handwritten, in his best French. He poured out his heart, his regret, his nostalgia, his admiration for the resilience he'd underestimated. He spoke of his skills, his desire to teach, to build, to finally come home and contribute his last years to the soil that birthed him. He didn't ask for a meeting, he pleaded for the honor of one. Monsieur le Président, he wrote, the ink smudging slightly from an old man's trembling hand. I turned my back when my country called. I see now it was my greatest mistake. I beg only for the chance to stand on Burkinabè soil again, not as a spectator, but as a humble servant ready to help rebuild what I once foolishly thought was lost. Aïcha booked a flight to Ouagadougou. She didn't announce it, she just went. She navigated the changed city, still tense, still bearing scars, but pulsing with an energy absent for years. She saw the new buildings, the cleaner streets, the palpable sense of collective purpose. It was humbling. She camped outside the presidency, not literally, but figuratively. She called contacts, emailed incessantly, submitted formal requests through every channel she could find. Her message was stripped bare of academic pretense. I was wrong. You are proving a nation can reclaim its destiny. I offer my skills, my voice, whatever is needed. Please, grant me an audience. Weeks passed. Amadou's calls yielded only vague assurances that his request was noted. Moussa's heartfelt letter disappeared into the bureaucratic void. Aïcha spent days waiting in ministry anterooms, only to be told the minister was in the field, or the president's schedule was fully committed for the foreseeable future. The crushing blow came indirectly. Amadou finally reached a mid-level official in the investment promotion agency, a young man whose father Amadou had known vaguely years ago. The official was courteous but weary. Mr. Diallo, he said, his voice devoid of malice, simply stating facts. We appreciate your renewed interest, truly. But you must understand. The president's focus is absolute. He meets with investors who believed in Burkina Faso when belief was hardest. Who took the risk alongside our people? Who put their capital here when the headlines screamed only death? Their factories are opening now. Their farms are planting now. They trusted us when we had nothing but resolve to offer. The president sees their courage. He rewards their faith. He walks the sites with them. A pause. For others, those who waited to see if we would fail or succeed before engaging, well, there are procedures, committees, processes. The door isn't closed, sir. But the president's personal time, it is reserved for those who stood with Burkina Faso when Burkina Faso stood alone. The line went dead. Amadou understood. He wasn't being punished. He was being prioritized, right at the very bottom of the list. His money was still welcome eventually, through the proper impersonal channels. But the access, the recognition, the chance to sit across from the man who had defied their expectations and rebuilt hope from the ashes, that ship had sailed. It had sailed while he was standing on the dock, shaking his head and saying, "It'll never float." In Montreal, Moussa received a formal typed letter from the Ministry of the Diaspora. It thanked him for his patriotic sentiments and his offer of assistance. It directed him to their website for information on investment procedures and returnee programs. It was signed by a deputy director he'd never heard of. The dream of a personal audience, of offering his apology and his skills directly to Traoré, evaporated. He was just another name in a database. Aïcha, sitting on a bench in Ouagadougou slowly revitalizing downtown, watched a convoy of government vehicles speed past. She didn't know if Traoré was inside. Probably not. He was likely miles away, in some liberated village, listening to elders, inspecting a new well, encouraging soldiers. She finally understood. Her intellectual acknowledgement, her academic validation, meant nothing here. The currency of this new Burkina Faso was faith demonstrated by action, by presence, by risk taken when the outcome was uncertain. She had offered neither faith nor action when it counted. Her plea for a meeting wasn't just ignored. It was irrelevant to the immense, gritty, ongoing work of national rebirth happening all around her. She was a spectator, arriving late to a play already in its triumphant second act. The Burkinabè citizens abroad who had refused to invest in Ibrahim Traoré's country, who had dismissed it as a basket case, who had scoffed at his vision, were now united in a bitter, humbling reality. They wanted in, desperately. They saw the momentum, the potential, the fierce pride radiating from their homeland. They saw the opportunities blooming in the soil they had declared barren. They saw a leader who, against all their predictions, was actually delivering. And now, they were begging for scraps of attention, for a sliver of the access granted to those who had believed, begging for a chance to salvage their pride and secure their place in the new Burkina Faso rising from the dust. But the man they had doubted, the country they had written off, was too busy building the future to dwell on the regrets of the past. The meeting they craved, the acknowledgement they sought, remained stubbornly, painfully, out of reach. The bitterest lesson was the simplest. Sometimes, believing comes first, and they had believed too late. Their clenched fists, once raised in dismissal, now pounded on a door that only opened for those who had extended a hand when it was hardest to do so. The sound echoing back wasn't rejection, but the relentless, hopeful noise of a nation rebuilding itself without them.